Hello. Today I want to talk about something that might shake up your table a little bit, and that's tabletop role playing games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons. So, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. It's the game that introduced so many of us to role playing, but it's not the only game out there. And sometimes trying something different can completely transform how you see the hobby. So, stick around, and we're going to go over a few game systems that I think are worth a look. Welcome to Whispers from the Phylactery. If you're new, I like to talk about various aspects of tabletop role playing games, from encounters to styles of play and systems in general, with a healthy dose of the occasional rambling. So, if that's your style, then we're just going to get into it. And the first question is, why try other systems? I know a lot of people love Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a solid system. It's what gave me my first start into tabletop role playing games so many years ago. I was sitting around my friend's table playing second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons as his dad led us on an epic journey into thinking way back now, um, led us on a journey to retake a fort captured by orcs. Um, and I still remember the battle goat that we slapped armor on, and it did more damage than the rest of us, which was a little bit sad. But that's how the dice go. And then the years passed, and I picked it up again in high school. I was started playing Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 with my friends, and we were telling tales of our own. However embarrassing they might be to look back on now, I still remember those initial campaigns, and there was a bit of the edginess of teenagers in them. So, if so many people play Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of people ask, why should we bother playing other games? And D&D is great for heroic fantasy, dungeon crawls, and classic adventure vibes. And its several editions give options to play groups depending on the crunch factor that they're after, or the level of mechanics that they're after. Um, and it's often the gateway. It's the biggest name. There's Critical Role. There's Dimension 20. It's what brings people into the hobby. But other games can teach you different game master skills. Um, they open up new genres you hadn't considered and let your group experience stories you simply can't tell with D&D mechanics. Or they at least save your group a lot of effort struggling to mesh rules or create rules when there's already a system designed around what you're attempting to do. Um, like if we want to do a sci-fi space opera with mechs that's reminiscent of the Gundam anime, there's Lancer. Um, So instead of trying to force rules onto something, there are options, and we can take a look and see what works, what people have already designed. Plus, I think it's just refreshing to see how different designers approach role playing, combat, or character creation, and the wealth of mechanical differences that exist out there. I mean, in Japan, the largest role playing game is Call of Cthulhu instead of Dungeons and Dragons. So there is a whole world of tabletop role playing games or just role playing games, and my shelf can attest to that as I look at it over the years. Um, and it has just become piled with different systems. So let's get started with something soft to begin our exploration, and we'll work our way further away from Dungeons and Dragons as we go. So the big name that everyone kind of goes to, at least online, seems to be, is Pathfinder Second Edition. It's usually called Pathfinder Second Edition or PF2. And if you love the crunchy tactical combat of earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, but wish it had more customization options or more balance, then Pathfinder Second Edition might be exactly what you're looking for. It builds on the D&D 3.5 roots, but it's updated them into a more balanced and intuitive system. And one of the standout features is the three action economy, and I fell in love with it as soon as I tried it out for myself. I wasn't so sure about it when I first heard about it. I could definitely see how it would work and the appeal, but once I started playing with it, I was sold, and it's hard for me to go back now to the standard action, the move action. Basically, Every turn, you get 3 actions, and you can spend them however you want. You can move 3 times, you can attack 3 times. That's not usually the right answer, though. Or you can mix actions from the options your character has available. It feels flexible and dynamic, especially in combat, when you might move, attack, move, or move, feint, attack, intimidate, move, attack, or just be a monk. So a lot of the 3 action system and the classes build on breaking the 3 action system. Each class gets to do it a little bit differently. The one that popped into my mind was the monk, where they have their flurry of blows mechanic, and in second edition, that translates as they can spend one of their actions to make 2 attacks. So overall, they could make 4 attacks in a turn, but the system disincentivizes that by a lower chance to hit. Otherwise, they can move, attack twice, move again, or they can move, trip someone, attack twice. The ranger can fire multiple arrows or command their companion to attack more than once. And a lot of the game warps around what abilities do you have to break this 3 action system? What can you do? What can your character do? If you're casting a spell, are you going to move or attack after? Spells take a lot of time, so they're usually 2 to 3 actions. Some are 1 action. They're the cantrips or the focus spells, which are sort of like cantrips. I would call focus spells more like D&D 4, 4th edition. They're counter spells. You can use them once per encounter because in Pathfinder you have to recharge your focus spells after. Yeah. So Pathfinder, I also find shines when it comes to character building. There are a ton of feats, ancestry options, class paths, letting your players fine tune exactly what they want their character to be and what they want them to do. And with the inclusion of the availability of medical options, either through the medicine skill or items or different classes utilizing that, um, either a druid or an alchemist, it no longer pigeonholes the cleric or just, I suppose, the divine caster into being the sole healer for the party. Ideally, in an adventure party that I run or that I play in, 2 people have medicine. Where it's out of combat healing, it's a little bit slower, but it still brings your hit points back. You don't have to rely on in combat oh no spells. The cleric can focus on what they want to do, whether that's blasting or supporting or healing. If they do want to heal, clerics still have ridiculous levels of healing. And at higher levels, when the fighter is brought back from the brink of death to full hit points with a single spell, it sometimes makes me a little bit annoyed. But that's what they're good at. It's part of their class, and if that makes the player happy, then that's what makes the player happy. So if your party enjoys the game part of role-playing game, optimizing builds and strategic fights, I think Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a great fit, but that's not to say that it shies away from role-playing either. Some of my favorite storytelling moments have come from Pathfinder games. And best of all, I think, well, this kind of varies. For me, it's a pretty good selling point. Paizo, the publisher of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, their official adventures and their support materials are generally considered excellent, offering deep lore, rich settings, and complex plots to slot into your campaigns with a whole collection of various settings. You can go to the demon-infested wastes of Sarkoran in the World Wound, or down to Numenaria, where it mixes fantasy with high science. There's down to the jungles of the Mwangi Expanse, or the pirate-infested cores, the pirate-infested shores of the Shattered Cove. There's Cheliax, the tyrannical nation, Andoran, the nation of liberty. There's so many options, and I've played in a good number of them. I love almost all of them. I believe my favorite is either Osiriya, which is the Egyptian analog, or the uh, I guess now in 2nd edition it got renamed with the rising of the tyrant Lich King Tarbafon, sorry, in Ustalov. There's a lot of options, and I'm currently in the early stages of running a 2nd edition game to the theme of the song Dungeons of Dreadrock, which I'll link down below just because I really do like that song sung by Carlene. Yeah, it's a haunting melody that just conjured images of dusty crypts and ancient mysteries waiting to be uncovered in my head. And I might have played it on repeat too many times, but I love it. And I don't know. Part of the key takeaway to take away with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you don't have to buy this big book. It is a big book. It's hefty. It is 650-ish pages. You don't have to. Pathfinder has all of their rules available online for free through the Archive of Nethys or other programs. And the character builder I heartily recommend is Path Builder. I use it for every single character I make. Even when I'm playing online games, I build it in Path Builder first before I switch it over to Foundry or Fantasy Grounds. I love this system. It is my go-to for high fantasy D&D style games. Yeah. So, game number 2 that we're going to talk about is Dungeon World. Unfortunately, I don't have any book for this that I can show you. Once again, all the rules for Dungeon World are available online for free. Or you can buy the PDF. I do have a printout of the PDF, but it's not a nice fancy binder or anything. And Dungeon World is the other end of the spectrum. So where Pathfinder 2nd Edition is very rules heavy and crunch, Dungeon World is powered by the Apocalypse system, and it's designed for fast narrative inspired fantasy adventures that don't stop your ideas. They just really help push them forward. So the great thing is that this system is very open. I've mulled over running sci-fi inspired adventures with it or dystopian adventures with it as well. I talked with some friends about running a Judge Dredd campaign in it, or at least a short adventure, just because of how flexible it is. Instead of rolling to hit armor class and tracking grids, Dungeon World uses really simple mechanics to express what happens in the story. What the system calls moves, like hack and slash or defy danger, you roll 2d6 to tell you what happens next, and often with unexpected complications as things go slightly awry, even as you succeed, unless you get really good and then everything goes according to plan. Perfect. It is golden sunshine. However, more often than not, something small is going to go wrong. I really like it because these simple moves can be flavored differently according to the setting, if it's sci-fi or fantasy, or just to the players. Two players might describe their character's actions as completely different, but it's still the same basic maneuver according to the game. If you're fighting somebody, it's a hack and slash. If you're shooting at someone, it's a volley, whether that's with a bow or with a pistol. And these 2d6 rolls are the core mechanic of Dungeon World. Other dice are used, the other polyhedrals, for damage or for generating loot, if the GM wants to generate loot that way. I like it. Treasure isn't as important in Dungeon World for the basic things. Like you find some art, you find some gems, you find money. Magic items are more rare in Dungeon World. You might only find a handful over the course of the adventure, but each of them generally has an impact on the game and how it's played. Whether that impacts your rolls or what options you have available, it might open up new moves for you to pull off. An example of that is in a game I ran, I had a barbarian, and I gave him a lesser version of Mjolnir, where he didn't normally have a volley attack, but he could use the hammer to channel lightning and shoot a beam of electricity through the volley action. What I find makes Dungeon World amazing is how it empowers both players and GMs to co-create the world on the fly. The GM asks questions like, what does your character fear about this dungeon? Or who built these ruins? And the GM can then use the player's answers to build the session dynamically. You don't have to, of course. You can have it all pre-slotted out with what's going on. But You can use player backstories and just ask questions, uh, like what's going on in your character's head as you travel to this place? What is motivating them to explore this particular dungeon or go to this area? You might find some ruins on the wall. Ask the players if they get a successful check, like what do the ruins relate to? And then you can build from there. I find Dungeon World is really good for groups who want to focus on storytelling over the mechanics, and for GMs who want to improvise adventures without super extensive prep. My prep for sessions was a few notes, a little bit of like tagging on enemies I wanted the party to fight or that they might fight. There's still structure and advancement, but it's really lightweight, flexible, and it keeps the fiction moving instead of bogging down with character leveling up. When you level up, you pick a stat that you increase and you pick a new move you have access to from your class's sheet of available moves. It takes 5 minutes, and then you keep going. Two players playing the same class can both feel unique. Though the game does advise you not to double up on classes. And I agree with this just because some of the class's core moves can be very samey, and it's good to round out the party with other types like druids, barbarians, wizards, thieves, fighters. Um, there are, no, I think there's about 10 classes in Dungeon World. And then, of course, there's the community made ones. So, if you've ever felt bogged down by rules or just want a system where you can sit down and start telling stories within minutes, Dungeon World is definitely worth trying, and I heavily recommend it. It's my system of choice for pickup games or one shots, or groups just have a light table aesthetic. Sometimes I don't talk good. My last game with Dungeon World was a Nordic adventure that leaned in heavily, really heavily, into Norse mythology. A group of heroes traveling across the land to stop a cult dedicated to bringing about Ragnarok and summoning Jormungandr from the depths to consume Midgard. It had them traveling between various clans and their homelands trying to stop this cult. So, yeah, I like Dungeon World. It is my go-to system for selling light. If we're just like, yep, we're gonna play today. What are we gonna play? Dungeon World. The rules are available online for free, or you can support the developers, and the PDF is fairly cheap. I think it's like 15 to 20 bucks, maybe. Up next is going to be game number 3. This one's starting to get a little bit further away from D&D. This is Vampire the Masquerade. So let's talk Vampire. And this is where the dice mechanics start to shift for the next few games. We've wandered out of the realms of Dungeons and Dragons D20 systems, but I promise that if you stick around, I'll tell you why these games are worth giving a shot. A quick interlude before that, as I appease the YouTube gods, and would just like to ask if you like my content and what I'm doing, take a moment to consider giving a like and subscribe. It helps me out and lets me know what videos you enjoy and what I should make more of. But back to the regularly scheduled rant, Vampire. So, if your table loves urban fantasy, personal horror, or dark political intrigue, Vampire the Masquerade is an absolute classic with a new edition that aims to bring it more in line with modern game design. So it has options for both types of players. If you like really crunchy, there's V20, which is sort of the standard for that style of game within Vampire now. Or there is V5, which is a more flexible D&D 5th edition style rules light version. Personally, I play both, although I generally run Vampire V5 as that's what I prefer. And in Vampire, you play as vampires, surprise, struggling to balance their inhuman hunger with the remnants of their humanity, all while navigating the secret societies and power struggles that keep undead existence hidden from the mortal world. What makes Vampire stand out is its focus on personal goals, moral dilemmas, and social manipulation. I need to stress this point. You're not superheroes that are vampires. Some tables run it this way, but for me, you are monsters. You are trying your best not to become a monster, but at the end of the day, you kill people to survive. You are a monster. Combat exists, but it's rarely the focus. At least that's what I aim for. And when it is there, it's fast and brutal combat. Instead, it's about choices. Do you cling to your human morality, or do you give in to your beast? The thing inside of you that takes the effective but monstrous route as you struggle to survive the power plays and the essentially mafia level underground world that you now find yourselves in, where the next night is never guaranteed. Each roll of the dice is made with a number of d10s from an attribute and a skill that applies to the action you're trying to perform. And then, depending on your inhuman hunger, the chance for things to go awry as the beast takes control grows. This is more a factor in V5, where it's a risk reward style of play. The more you use your vampiric abilities, the more your hunger can grow. And that impacts your dice rolls by giving you a higher chance of the beast taking control of you and exerting its influence. Although the beast is you. So it gets a bit tricky. I like it. It is the struggle within ourselves as we try to do better. So the more you use your vampiric powers, the easier your undead life is. There are powers that let you manipulate mortals with just a glance. You can command mortals to do what you desire. You can grab a lock and shear it off with your hand. But all these things rouse the beast within you. And it makes it closer to slip into overtaking you in a frenzy of hunger, anger, or fear. I think Vampire is a great system for exploring darker themes like immortality and the curse that it really is, addiction, power, and guilt. And if that's something your group enjoys delving into, it's wonderful. It is a more adult oriented system. There's a lot of subject matter that can be inappropriate, and I find it really relies on a session zero for everyone to be on the same page, to build your characters and your coterie, which is the name of your adventure. It's their version of an adventuring party together. How your characters relate to each other is one only helping out because they're blackmailed, or they were blackmailed 100 years ago, and now they're tentatively friends. They're not enemies, at least. I don't want to scare people off of it, but it does involve heavy themes of addiction and the inherent nature of abuse that comes from being a predator. Plus, the lore is incredibly deep, and there are decades of world building and supplements that give you endless material to play with. All of it with the hint of the unreliable narrator allowing you to add in your own touches. Nothing's set in stone. You can change it. There's no true origin to vampires in the game. Everyone has their own belief. And I like that. So if your group wants to change from heroic fantasy, Vampire the Masquerade can create unforgettable stories full of drama, secrets, and moral gray areas. I'm currently plotting out a chronicle, which is their version of an adventure, set in a dark urban fantasy Montreal, Canada, where things lurk in the shadows and humans try to get by. So what happens when some new vampires on the block stumble into things that they shouldn't? I like it. Downside with this one, you're not able to get the rules for free. That sucks. But it's a good game. Book's not too expensive. I think it's about $60, about 60 Canadian. So, Vampire the Masquerade. Game number 4. Star Wars, Edge of the Empire. So let's talk about Star Wars. If you ever wanted to play a gritty Star Wars adventure where you are smugglers, bounty hunters, those that work outside of the Imperial sanctioned network, whether that's doctors, farmers, pilots, or your shady rebel operatives. Edge of the Empire captures that vibe perfectly. I've played in a few games, I've run a few games. It uses Fantasy Flight Games narrative dice system. Once again, we're no longer in the pure D20s. And it has custom symbols for successes, failures, advantages, and threats all rolled together. You build your dice pool from the benefits you have, whether that's skills and attributes, and then you add in negative dice for the environment, how hard something is going to be to hit. If you're shooting at someone, they add their defense dice to your roll, so it's just the players rolling. But what's cool about it is that the rolls don't just tell you success or failure, they create complications and narrative twists every time you roll. So you might succeed at hacking a terminal, but in the process, you triggered an alarm because you had a complication. Or you might fail a negotiation, but gain useful intel about your target if you were rolling to persuade someone. This keeps every outcome interesting and pushes the story forward dynamically as things keep happening. And it lets game runners play on their improvisational skills. I cannot talk. Edge of the Empire focuses on the Outer Rim underworld of Star Wars with mechanics for obligation, which represents debts or moral entanglements that come back to haunt your crew. There's always something that someone owes to someone on the outskirts of Star Wars society. And each session, this can be used by the game runner to introduce new complications for your crew. If you want cinematic Star Wars storytelling where mechanics enhance narrative flow rather than bog it down, I think Edge of the Empire is a fantastic choice. Some people aren't as much of a fan because it does move away from the Jedi Sith. Force users are much more rare in this period. This is set after the Battle of Yavin and before the fall of the Empire. That's the default one. Of course, you can always make your changes. But players aren't Jedi like the older Star Wars games. I really like how much more down to earth it is. The Force isn't the answer. It's your scrappiness, your cunning, your desire to survive. Character creation is varied, and it gives players lots of options utilizing the feat trees that you can buy abilities or character boosts from as you progress in the game. And I like this in that it allows you to mix and match which skill trees you want to use for your character. Where you might have, I'll bring this in later, but the medic dedication or medic skill tree, and you combine it with the mechanic skill tree or the researcher skill tree. And now you have a smart person that likes to fix things that can pull different abilities from all three trees or progress down one all the way. One of my favorite characters I've ever played is Protocol Droid named Fixer. That was reprogrammed as a mechanic and a medic, who later gained sentience and escaped from his owners. Fixer now travels the stars, hiring crews. I mean, sometimes players die. It's unfortunate. Between games, he's my consistent character, so he just hires a new crew. He owns his ship. And he fixes all manner of things, both mechanical and biological, as he tries to fly under the Imperial radar and not get reprogrammed into obedience. So, if you like Star Wars, and I mean, who doesn't want to pilot a rusty freighter on the run from the Hutts or Imperial patrols? It's a recipe for memorable is the word, campaigns. I know how to speak English completely. Edge of the Empire, unfortunately, you can't get the rules for free. You do have to go through Fantasy Flight Games to purchase them. And there are a couple different supplements now. I do like the base game, but I have read them. I own the other ones, The Age of Rebellion. I think it's a solid system. And last on my list is Dread. No hardcover. It's just a download. But this one I had put into a fancy ring binder or ring booklet because I like it. Dread is unlike a lot of other tabletop role playing games out there. It is a horror game that is designed purely for storytelling intention, where, kind of like Call of Cthulhu, your characters are expected to perish and die, usually horribly. As a group, you're essentially creating a horror movie, and it's impossible to know who, if anyone, is going to make it to the end. I love to bring in a full soundboard and light effects to really bring the atmosphere to life when I run Dread. It's the farthest from D&D that I have on this list. It replaces dice with a Jenga tower, which I have up there somewhere. Um, every time your character tries to do something, well, something challenging. If you're walking down the hallway, there's no issue. If you're trying to do something challenging, you pull a block from the tower. The more difficult the action that you're trying to perform, the more pulls from the tower you need to perform. And if the tower falls, your character is removed from the story, usually in a dramatic, terrifying way. So this mechanic creates incredible tension. Every single action, like, sorry, cut this part out. This mechanic creates incredible tension. Even simple actions like sneaking down a hallway or opening a locked door become nerve-wracking decisions. The more unstable the tower becomes, the more your characters feel their doom approaching. What's lurking on the other side of that door? Is it trapped with a poison needle? Or is there a sinister killer stalking down the hallway behind you that you're not aware of? What makes Dread brilliant is how elegantly I find it reinforces horror storytelling. There's no need to track hit points or combat rounds. The physical act of pulling blocks is the suspension. It's perfect for one shots. I love to do Halloween one shots with it, uh, especially if you're running a haunted house, alien horror, or survival thriller session and you want a cinematic, edge of your seat experience. The rulebook comes with two scenarios: a wilderness adventure, as your group of river rafters is stalked and hunted by a murderous lycanthrope in unfamiliar territory with minimal supplies and no guide. Can your characters make it home back to civilization, or are they all going to perish in the wilderness in the night? The other scenario is a Cthulhu inspired trek into the Antarctic, a journey to discover what happened to the previous expedition who failed to report back. This one features ancient temples and eldritch mystery under the light of the pale moon. And if you loved Mountains of, or Beyond the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, then I think this adventure is right up your alley. I've run both and I've enjoyed them immensely. Getting to watch the looks on my players' faces, and the online community has a great collection of fan made horror scenarios if you don't want to make your own. I think it would be great for a zombie one that I kind of have in the back of my mind that I'm working on. Maybe for this Halloween. I like zombies. I love zombie movies, zombie media. I really love Korean zombie stuff right now. Um, I I love Dread. I don't run it as much as I would like to. It's not a campaign game; it's a one-shot game, and generally I try to go all out when I run Dread. So lights, atmospheric effects, soundboard, maybe a fog machine if I can get my hands on one. It, I love it. The rules are not available for free, but it's a pretty cheap download just to get the PDF. So if you stuck around this long, we're going to the wrap up. Why try these games? In my opinion, it's because each one teaches you something new about role playing, storytelling, and your own preferences as both a game master and a player. You might find that the dark urban fantasy or horror investigation scratches an itch you never knew that you had, or that running a crunchier system gives you better encounter ideas or pacing for your next D&D boss fight. I mean, I've stolen mechanic ideas from Pathfinder for D&D and from D&D for Pathfinder. Uh, some things just work well, regardless of the rest of the system. And this is a big one. Honestly, sometimes your table just needs a palate cleanser. A session or two in a new system that can help relight that spark if things are growing stale with your current game. It also gives a good opportunity for would-be game masters to try picking up the other side of the screen. If there's a system that speaks to them and the group is learning all together, then no one knows the answers really. I think it's good to experiment with other systems, especially when you have the chance. I like to do one shots of new systems. So, have you ever played any of these games, or do you have a favorite tabletop role playing game that isn't D&D that I didn't add to this list? Let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear what systems inspire you in your stories. There are so many out there. I would love to run a Call of Cthulhu game, but I haven't had the chance. I have all the books on my shelf. It's just time. I also have Steampunk and Cthulhu, and uh, I need to run another one, Knives in the Dark. There's so many systems out there. If you enjoyed this video, I mean, we all know the drill now. Consider liking and subscribing for more of my more of my tabletop role playing game chats. I just like sharing my opinion. Hopefully, you like listening to it. And until next time, I guess keep rolling, keep storytelling, and take care, adventurers.